Imagine standing in a crowded hall where every face smiles at you, yet every smile hides calculation. Every handshake is a measure, every compliment a quiet test. You are not yet powerful, but something in the air whispers that you could be. And in that whisper lies the beginning of all real power, the silent conviction that you no longer need permission. The world pretends to honor merit, fairness, and consensus. But beneath this delicate theater runs an older current, the ruthless architecture of dominance. Power has never been granted freely. It is always taken. And those who wait for recognition die waiting, applauded only by their own ghosts. Niccolò Machiavelli, that most misunderstood of political philosophers, saw through this illusion centuries ago. He recognized that the first act of power is internal, the refusal to obey the invisible script written by others. The rule of silent acquisition begins when a person stops seeking legitimacy and starts creating inevitability. Silent power is not the roar of conquest. It is the art of appearing harmless while constructing an empire beneath the noise. It is the predator camouflaged as prey, the strategist disguised as servant, the patient builder whose influence grows like roots, unseen until the tree towers over all who doubted it. We live in an age obsessed with visibility, followers, titles, public validation. But power does not bloom under constant light. It grows in the shadows of subtle decisions, in the quiet corridors of preparation where no one is watching. The ones who master silence master surprise, and surprise is the sharpest edge in any struggle for control. Machiavelli understood that history remembers the decisive, not the compliant. His writings, especially The Prince, are less about tyranny than about timing, the delicate art of knowing when to strike and when to remain invisible. Power, he warned, decays when exposed too early. The moment you reveal your ambitions, they become someone else's target. Silent acquisition is the opposite of rebellion for its own sake. It's not about chaos but orchestration, about learning the system so intimately that you can bend it without breaking it. The apprentice who listens more than he speaks, the employee who observes office politics like a chessboard, the leader who lets rivals underestimate him. These are the disciples of Machiavelli's secret rule. The paradox is haunting. To seize power, you must first appear unthreatening. To dominate, you must seem obedient. The lion's roar warns enemies, but the fox survives by silence. In every hierarchy, there is a moment when stillness becomes strategy, when the act of not reacting confuses those addicted to noise. The modern mind finds this uncomfortable. We are told that authenticity means exposure, that transparency is virtue. But what if exposure is the greatest weakness of all? What if the loudest soul in the room is merely announcing its own vulnerability? Power begins where explanation ends. The one who can remain silent amid provocation, who can endure misunderstanding without defense, accumulates invisible strength. Because silence is not absence, it is potential. And potential, carefully cultivated, becomes destiny. As the Stoic philosopher Seneca once wrote, "He who has great power should use it lightly. But to use it lightly, one must first possess it absolutely, and that possession can never be begged for. It must be engineered, layer by layer, through patience, observation, and an unshakable belief that influence does not need applause." So ask yourself this: who are you when no one is watching? What empire are you quietly building in the dark while others chase approval in the light? The world belongs not to those who shout, but to those who act, invisibly, deliberately, and without asking. Power, when stripped of its symbols and titles, is not a crown. It is a current, invisible, steady, and often unacknowledged until it pulls everything toward itself. The tragedy of most ambitious people is that they chase the crown before they've mastered the current. They crave recognition before they've earned control. And so, they mistake visibility for power, when in truth, visibility is often the graveyard of influence. The silent acquisition begins long before anyone notices your ascent. It starts with control over perception, not control over people. In every environment, a corporate boardroom, a social circle, a government office, there exists a hidden architecture of attention. Those who can subtly redirect that attention command the flow of reality itself. Consider this: you walk into a room of rivals. Everyone is speaking, competing to be heard. You, however, speak less and listen more. You begin to study their tones, their fears, the invisible hierarchy beneath the conversation. In that moment, you are no longer a participant. You are a cartographer, mapping the unseen borders of power. Machiavelli would have called this the study of fortune, the unpredictable currents that determine victory or failure. But he also believed that fortune favors the one who prepares quietly for its storms. The person who learns before acting, who collects intelligence before making a move, becomes like a shadow in the mind of others, present yet impossible to grasp. To build invisible power, one must master 3 dimensions of silence. 1. Observational silence, where you study without judgment. Every person, every system, every weakness becomes part of your mental map. 2. Strategic silence, where you conceal your motives behind a facade of calm neutrality. People trust those who seem uninterested in control. 3. Temporal silence, where you act only when timing aligns perfectly, refusing to be rushed by ego or emotion. This trinity of silence transforms your presence into mystery. And mystery, paradoxically, draws loyalty and fear in equal measure. In the beginning, invisible power is indistinguishable from humility. You may appear deferential, even submissive, but beneath the politeness lies architecture. Every conversation a brick, every observation a foundation. By the time others recognize your influence, it's too late. They're already orbiting your gravity. The essence of Machiavellian strategy is not cruelty, it's clarity. To see people not as they pretend to be, but as they are. To recognize that every human relationship, no matter how noble it appears, contains negotiation, leverage, and need. He understood that morality and manipulation often share the same tools. The difference lies in intent and self-control. Those who wait for formal authority to act are already enslaved by permission. The true strategist moves long before authority is granted. They shape environments subtly, introduce ideas that reappear as others' thoughts, and shift the collective direction without owning the public credit. This is the purest form of control, to rule through influence, not declaration. The world often misunderstands such quiet power, mistaking it for luck or coincidence. But luck is merely preparation meeting the right disguise. You cannot seize opportunity if you are busy demanding acknowledgement. You must first learn to move unseen, not out of fear, but out of foresight. The German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer once said, "Talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see." To seize power without permission, you must become that kind of genius. One who sees the invisible targets that others ignore because they are too busy performing. Invisible power is not about deception. It is about strategic invisibility, knowing when your silence builds more momentum than your speech, when your restraint amplifies your reach. And so the rule continues: do not announce your rise. Let it unfold in the background, like dawn dissolving the stars. Inevitable, silent, unstoppable. Every struggle for power unfolds within a theater, not of marble and curtains, but of perception. The audience is everyone around you. Colleagues, allies, enemies, the indifferent. The stage is every conversation, every gesture, every silence you choose or refuse to fill. Power is not simply held. It is performed, even when the performer refuses to admit it. The wise know this. The world does not reward truth directly. It rewards the perception of truth. The same act that condemns one person as arrogant may crown another as confident. The same silence that marks one as weak may render another as mysterious. The difference is not in the act but in how it is framed. Machiavelli understood perception as the most malleable material in politics, softer than gold, but far more valuable. He wrote of the prince who must appear merciful, faithful, humane, sincere, religious, yet remain prepared to act in opposition when necessity demands it. The word appear is the entire secret. Appearance is not deceit, it is diplomacy with reality. But how does one manipulate perception without becoming hollow? How can authenticity survive the masks required by strategy? The answer lies not in pretending, but in selective revelation. Authenticity does not mean exposing all of yourself. It means revealing the parts that serve your purpose and concealing the parts that dilute your power. Think of the moon. It shows only one face to Earth, but that is enough to command the tides. Power functions the same way. A controlled reflection that seems whole because it is consistent, not because it is complete. In the theater of perception, control over your narrative is your most silent weapon. Those who speak carelessly give away leverage. Those who act unpredictably lose symmetry. The powerful maintain a rhythm that others unconsciously adjust to. Their words are measured, their gestures intentional. Nothing feels accidental, yet nothing feels forced. To cultivate this, one must master the art of emotional camouflage. You do not deny your emotions, you discipline them. Anger becomes strategy, sadness becomes empathy, joy becomes persuasion. You learn to redirect emotional energy rather than suppress it. The goal is not to become mechanical but unreadable. For when others cannot predict your reactions, they must respect your possibilities. Every structure of authority depends on collective belief. Leaders, influencers, and rulers survive only because people believe they deserve to. The Machiavellian mind recognizes this fragility and tends to the illusion as one would tend a garden. Power is not sustained by force alone, but by curated perception. And yet, this curation must never feel artificial. The most effective manipulation of appearance is one that blurs the line between authenticity and performance. You must believe your role to play it convincingly. A mask becomes truth when worn long enough with purpose. It is here that many fall, intoxicated by their own image. They forget that the mask was meant to serve them, not define them. They begin performing for applause instead of control. True power demands detachment even from your persona. It requires knowing when to shed the image that once seduced the crowd. The ancient strategist Sun Tzu warned, "Appear at points which the enemy must hasten to defend. March swiftly to places where you are not expected." To appear where expected is to be predictable. To master appearance is to remain fluid, sometimes bright, sometimes hidden, always beyond full comprehension. Invisibility may win battles, but illusion wins wars. The one who shapes the story controls the battlefield because people do not fight reality, they fight their perception of it. Therefore, guard your narrative as a fortress. Speak less than you know. Reveal less than you feel. And when you do act, let every gesture seem inevitable, as though destiny itself were your accomplice. The world is your audience even when you pretend not to perform. And in that pretense, that quiet manipulation of sight and belief, the silent acquisition advances another step toward dominion. Power is not only about what you do or how you do it, but when you do it. Timing is the heartbeat of domination, the invisible rhythm that separates the conqueror from the casualty. In every sphere of ambition, from politics to personal conquest, those who act too soon are devoured, and those who act too late are forgotten. The art of silent acquisition demands not only patience but precision, an almost spiritual awareness of when stillness must end. To seize power without permission, you must master the discipline of waiting, but not passive waiting. The waiting of the powerful is an incubation. It is a deliberate silence filled with calculation, observation, and slow consolidation. Each day of restraint gathers invisible tension, like a bowstring drawn but not yet released. The moment the release comes, it is irreversible, explosive, and, if done correctly, perceived as destiny rather than design. Machiavelli, in The Prince, wrote that fortune must be treated like a woman, to be dominated through audacity and timing. Though his metaphor is dated and brutal, his meaning remains profound. The world yields only to those who act when its defenses are momentarily down. Most people act when they feel ready. The wise act when opportunity is vulnerable. The discipline of timing begins with one brutal truth. The universe owes you no moment of clarity. The decisive instant will not announce itself with trumpets or certainty. It will appear disguised as chaos, ambiguity, or even disaster. Those who have trained in silence recognize these moments not through luck, but through pattern recognition. They have watched long enough to see the cycles others ignore. Power's timing requires two skills: anticipation and restraint. Anticipation is the ability to sense the shift in the air before the storm breaks, to recognize when an opponent's confidence turns into complacency, when an institution's stability trembles beneath its own weight. Restraint, on the other hand, is the ability to do nothing even when every impulse screams for action. Most lose their crowns not from weakness, but from impatience. The true Machiavellian strategist knows that the mind that can delay gratification can determine history. You do not need to control the entire narrative. You need only to intervene at the precise point where control yields the maximum ripple. Like a surgeon with a single incision, you act once, but perfectly. In a world addicted to immediacy, this discipline is almost alien. People announce their plans before they begin, leak their victories before they're secure, and rush into conflicts before understanding their cost. But silent power gathers beneath the noise, waiting for the collective attention to wander. It is in that lull, when others are distracted by spectacle, that the decisive hand emerges. Timing is also the only cure for fear. When you act prematurely, you act from panic. But when you move in rhythm with your environment, fear dissolves into flow, the sensation that events are unfolding through you rather than against you. That is when you appear inevitable. Consider the quote by Friedrich Nietzsche, who once wrote, "He who cannot command himself shall obey." Self-command is not only moral discipline, it is temporal discipline. To command yourself is to command time itself, to refuse the seduction of immediacy, to wait until your move is undeniable. The silent acquirer studies time like a sculptor studies stone. Every second is material to be chipped, smoothed, refined. When the statue finally emerges, the world will call it genius, but it was only patience disguised as talent. So the rule of timing is this: never confuse momentum with readiness. The waves of history rise and fall. Your role is not to fight them, but to know which one to ride. When the moment comes, act so swiftly and decisively that no one remembers your silence, only your inevitability. Because the ultimate act of power is not seizing the throne, it is making the world believe the throne moved toward you. The most dangerous moment in any rise to power is not the climb, it is the arrival. Many conquer the summit only to find it hollow. They mistake possession for permanence, and in doing so lose the very silence that gave them strength. For what begins quietly must remain quietly governed. Otherwise, the throne that was seized without permission becomes a cage made of its own echoes. When power is first gained, it is fragile, almost translucent. Every eye turns toward you. Every whisper becomes a test of your composure. You will be studied, misinterpreted, envied, and imitated. The loud power, the kind that announces itself, crumbles beneath this attention. But the power that maintains its shadow survives, because it continues to grow beneath the surface of perception, shaping outcomes without flaunting ownership. Machiavelli warned princes not to rely on affection or appearances, but on control over outcomes. Once power is acquired, the art lies in making it seem ordinary, not through deception, but through integration. The ruler who behaves as if power is natural disarms suspicion. Authority must never look newly won, even when it is. Let your rule appear like a continuation of what always was. People rebel against abruptness, not control. Yet, mastery over power is not sustained by external manipulation alone. The true test lies within. The ego, once fed by conquest, hungers endlessly. It whispers that you are invincible, that you are owed loyalty, that those beneath you exist to validate your dominance. This is the point at which empires, personal, political, or intellectual, begin to decay. Power's poison is certainty. To survive it, one must return to silence. Not the silence of inaction, but the silence of perspective. The mind must remain the same observer it was before it ascended. The great paradox is that once you hold power, you must pretend not to crave it. To wield it effectively, you must act as if it could vanish tomorrow. Detachment is no longer luxury, it is necessity. You must also learn to distribute shadows. Absolute visibility breeds resentment. Shared light creates illusion of fairness. Delegation, properly executed, is not generosity but camouflage. It allows you to remain unseen while your influence continues to act. The quiet strategist lets others carry the visible burden of power while retaining invisible command. The ancient philosopher Lao Tzu captured this with disarming simplicity. When the best leader's work is done, the people say, "We did it ourselves." This is not humility, it is the highest sophistication of rule. The one who can disappear within his own system achieves immortality of influence. Mastering power, therefore, requires unlearning the intoxication of possession. It demands that you move beyond dominance into orchestration, from direct control to environmental control. Instead of commanding people, you command the conditions that shape them. This is the transformation of the prince into the philosopher, the ruler into the architect. Silent acquisition ends where invisible governance begins. The hand that once grasped now guides. The mind that once calculated now contemplates. You learn to preserve power by diluting its appearance, to be everywhere in effect, but nowhere in accusation. You become, in essence, an echo, intangible but impossible to ignore. This is the ultimate rule Machiavelli never wrote explicitly but implied in every lesson. He who rules in silence cannot be dethroned by noise. For while others fight over titles and applause, the silent acquirer manipulates the tempo of the entire symphony, conducting reality itself. So remember, to seize power without permission is to reject dependency. To hold power without corruption is to reject certainty. And to transcend power entirely, to become its unseen architect, is to understand that the greatest influence needs no recognition. In the end, the most potent crown is made not of gold or authority, but of shadow, for only in shadow can control remain pure, unseen, and eternal. The silent ruler does not say, "I have power." He says nothing at all. And in that silence, the world obeys.